call the January 18, 2018 meeting to order. Roll call.
Neil Johnson,
Here.
Greg Collier,
Here.
Andrew Barker, Joel Gardner,
Here.
Steve Smith,
Here.
Bill Schoonover,
Here.
Greg Willoughby.
Entertain a motion for approval of minutes for the last couple of months.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Comments from the audience? James, operation report.
All right. Sarah sent out an email confirming that she'd sent the notice to Mr. Howard, saying that if he's not current by the end of this month, February 1, she would start the eviction process. As of yet, I don't think we've heard anything, so money, nothing. As far as our hangars, we're full other than 7 open T hangars, so we've got a waiting list of roughly 12 people. I've got a bid process started now for the topping the trees on David Street for the Tower View. So we've got to get those trimmed off before they start budding out leaves. They can't see the taxiway again. 2 wet years and then it's already grown back up. It's only been trimmed in 2016 we did it.
Axel do that last time?
Jay's Tree did it last time.
Did we get a bid from Axel?
On the office materials list, it looks like we figured roughly $2,000 for everything, just mirroring what's in that other office up on Powell Street.
Yes.
So roughly $2,000 for everything and take to finish it out, just like the other office, just the material list.
And a year's lease, right?
That's what they was asking for.
That's what would be out.
Right,
We're supposed to pay the materials.
right. We'll pay the materials and they'll provide all the labor, install permits and everything. He was hoping to be here today, but he couldn't attend.
And what's the year's lease on that?
4,200, $350 a month.
We would have 6,000 roughly invested in it.
Well, what we did on the other office, when the city wanted to use it, we gave them, I think, a little over a year to use it if they finished it out.
A little over a year.
But we didn't pay for the materials there, did we?
We didn't, I think they paid for the materials and everything.
That's the way what was the one before? Or the last one we did the same way. They paid materials,
City did.
City did.
but there was somebody else too I'm thinking of. I can't remember. Was it Dennis? I can't remember now.
He built an office in his hangar.
Oh, that's what that was.
Yeah, he built his own.
So how much more than a year did we give the city?
Year and a half, I believe, wasn't it?
It was what?
Year and a half.
So that would about
This
balance
seems,
out.
Right.
say this seems pretty fair then under that regard.
Yeah, or what about giving him a year and a half and let him furnish everything? We don't have to get involved in it.
What was the cost on the other side? Was it 10 grand?
10 grand.
You think he'd entertain that?
You can ask.
Make him the offer and let him choose either one.
Pardon me?
Make the offer to him, but let him have either one he wants.
6 months, that'd be about $2,000.
Yeah.
Months and let him do it all.
And you might tell him that's the way we would prefer it. I mean, because then we're totally out of it.
Right.
If he has to go get another screw, he can go get it. But that's what you usually get in into. You know, you got to take the material back, or you over order,
fit.
you under order. So it would be more. He'd have more flexibility there.
Okay.
What's your pleasure? Are we gonna?
I'll move that we offer that 18 months and he cover all the cost.
I'll second. Without the option.
Yeah.
Roll call?
Willoughby,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Collier,
Yes.
Gardner,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Schoonover,
Yes.
I want to speak to this hangar rent delinquency. We've been playing this game now for how many years?
Long time.
I know zero tolerance is tough to reach, but we need to get hardcore on this thing. Because what's happened, we've had people come into compliance and they go right back out. And my question, I guess, would be, are we in good enough shape to take that position as far as with our rents and our receipts? Are we, to me, you know, sometimes you have to make a statement, and then it kind of has a way of working out. But we'll have resistance, I'm sure, on the front end. But I don't know what resistance we would have to comply with or bend to, other than the fact we just need to say, hey guys, we're renting to you. We have to spend money. We have to spend time. The legal department has to spend time and effort to collect this thing. So I don't know how to do it. I don't even have a suggestion, but I would like to think about it and see if we can't this year move toward as close to zero tolerance as we can.
What does zero tolerance mean, 90 days?
You don't pay, you get out.
How long you give them?
That's what I'm asking for. That's what I'm saying.
Saying
How close can we go to that? How close can you get to zero tolerance? You know what zero tolerance is, but how far do we want to go? We've had policies, but we're not adhering to them. I mean, maybe if we really just enforce what we have on the rules, it would be good enough. But we're not.
What's the
getting there.
contract say?
30 days, isn't it?
That's 30 days and then 60 days and 90 days. You know, the interest
And
goes
there's
up every.
penalties for those, and those penalties don't seem to amount to anything.
Not going to pay, a penalty doesn't matter.
Well,
That's your intent.
I just threw that out there. I mean, we've been watching this every month, and we've been coming down hard in some cases, and we've been successful, but we've also had other people just leave us after a period of time we don't get anything, so. You know.
James says that we got 7 people on the list that are wanting hangars.
Now, we've got 17 people.
17 people.
This means that we evict and forget about our past rents or something, or, you know, go to other methods to do it, but eviction is what we're talking about. When do we start eviction? When do we get serious about it?
I'd like to see the city attorney's office become actively involved in it at a point of 60 days. If they get into the next 30, you know, after the 30-day grace period, that somewhere within that 30 to 60 days, I think some hardcore communication needs to go out. Neil, I agree with you totally. You know, it's very seldom do we not have a waiting list.
Right.
Well, the other thing is that when the total rent accumulates, like Howard here has, looks like somewhere $5,000-6,000 in back rent. Well, if he decides to leave and then we've got to go after him in court and all that, it's not worth that. The money maybe to try to get that, but it shouldn't get to the point where there's that much money accrued. There should be an accrual limit. If we don't exceed the 60 days or 90 days, there should be a dollar amount tied in there that says, okay, when you reach this point, if you haven't paid, it's mandatory eviction.
Well, we need
You
to,
don't get left.
we can start with this one right here and do what we say we're gonna do. 31st, we're up here, we're taking you out of there. And, I don't know how you, I know it's very difficult to evict somebody. I've been through this with renters on residential, but, I really believe we need to make this happen. You know, he's been chronically late for years, and we've let him by, and he'll get back on the delinquent list, and we'll chase him, and we'll finally get the money. That's how it's proved out in the past, isn't it, James? Eventually we get it and or get most of it, and then we let it go again.
Right.
Exactly what I'm talking about. So, well, at least we got this letter out there. Let's monitor it close, and but we're talking January to the 31st, and it's right on us. See what's happened, I guess, at the next meeting, or how can we monitor it through the month? As of January 31st, how do we inquire and find out what's happening?
Can we physically move them out of the property?
I don't know what exactly the procedure that the city attorney has in mind, how they intend to do that. But at some point, you gotta physically go over there and remove, lock it up, remove the stuff out of
Moved
it.
one out in the past and we moved their plane to the open T hangar.
I mean, we don't want to be responsible for his belongings, of putting them someplace and keeping them secure.
There's there's legal ways of doing it, and certainly that's what we want to follow. But if he just decides he's not going to get out of there, at some point, he has to be physically removed. And so I would say we go that route, we go whatever it takes to do it.
What you could do at the end of 90 days is double it too, or at a certain point, because if we've got people waiting for a hangar, that would have been income. He's not paying, and we've got people
That would almost have to be written in the contract
Yeah.
up front. and
But I think that's something that we need to consider, and we've already stated, once you exceed the 90 days, you get a new contract.
Well, what we have right now is the late payments, again, for the 60 and 90 days. And he's already passed that, so we have allowed them just to pick up the back portion of that before, haven't we? Not let them pay all the way up to zero, but let them stair step back. And I don't know if that's, once they get into delinquency, if that's, should be allowed, but
James, do you see him? Is he still here anywhere?
I haven't seen him in months.
Have you been in the hangar?
Is he still full?
Yeah, both hangars have planes in them, along with other.
have you, I know he's gotten this letter, but have you, as a contact person at the airport, have you had a contact with him by phone or anything to?
Not with him. I've called him. He doesn't answer or return calls, but I have talked to his wife.
Where I'm going with this is there a way that we should contact him either prior to this January 31st date, after, or sometime in the near future, and let James contact him and let him understand the charge that James been given, that we're serious about this. I mean, this letter should be sufficed, but still yet, it's been ignored before. And then what are we gonna do? And I know that every time I have tried to evict people and have been successful at it, you're looking at about a 2 to 3 month ordeal if they just refuse to get out. And it may be different in this space than it would be residential. And that's all I can speak for.
Sure it is, because you're putting somebody out on the street living, and this is not
This
the
may be
same.
easier to do, so.
Well, if I may, we're basically offering up a storage rental space. And we've got a contract that indicates to allow you to store your stuff in here, you pay us X amount of money a month. Now, and I'll dumb it down to my understanding, in any storage rental space I've ever seen or heard, if you don't pay your rental fees, then you are locked out of your facility. And after a certain period of time of not paying your rental fees, that product or that storage stuff becomes property of the facility owner. I would like to know if we have any type of legal leg to stand on, and then it's put up for auction to pay the back bills. So is there a that's going hard nose. Is there a way that the legal team could actually look at something like that and say, what can we do to go ahead and fully, evict somebody from it? And if they don't remove their stuff, at what point in time are they now, quote, squatting in our storage spot that we could be actually making an income off of from somebody else?
I think that's what we're talking about, is we follow the rules that we are allowed to play by and do it. Whereas I'm faulting the commission, myself included, is we seem to go to a point and then we back off and let it, we're not as hard-nosed as we should be. We need to do it. If we're gonna threaten it, we need to do it. That's my opinion.
If we come up with a procedure we want to do, if we write it in the lease, then and he's default, then he's agreed to it on the front end.
Yeah, we've tried, I think at one time we thought these penalties would do it. But,
And as far as I'm concerned, his lease is null and void if he stopped paying on it, and for him to actually get back in there, he's got to sign a new lease. And I would think any new lease would say, if you go 30, 60, 90, and then the penalties as it goes from there.
right.
And I think any new lease should have those serious penalties on it.
That's what we did in the past with the penalties, and we put people on the new lease if they were behind, and we automatically put them on a new lease. So I think we should revise our lease to stipulate that, and anybody in arrears that isn't caught up,
Well, I'll personally monitor this too, and I'll go to the city attorney's office and see what the response has been. I would rather James would be the one who makes the contact to Mr. Howard. But I just think we need to, when we come back to our February meeting, we need to know that we have made some headway on this thing, either got it resolved or something. And
Send him a notice of an auction at his hangar.
pardon me?
Send him a notice of an auction to be held at his hangar.
If we have, if what, I think like Joel too, but I don't know that.
Right, I don't know.
And so that's a question we need to find out, city attorney, when can we exercise that? And you bet, that would be certainly,
We've talked about that before with them, and just from memory, I don't think we have any right to their aircraft.
I don't know. I mean,
well, I know, and it's probably in the lease
That'd be a big
agreement, but in a
piece.
mini storage, if you do that and you don't pay, whatever's in there is sold to satisfy the debt. Now, that's probably in their agreement. We don't have that in our agreement, but we should modify our agreement that allows us.
it's actually not supposed to have anything in there but the airplane. So there
That's
you go.
right.
That's probably just not written in there.
Years
But-
ago,
But what Joel's saying is, yeah, they become storage facilities. and they
Well, if
put
somebody has a
everything on
car in a mini storage, that would be used. I don't know how you're gonna have to go to court to get the title, probably. And that's an issue because it's a titled property rather than,
I think the simplest way to do it is find out what happens the 31st, when he's got the letter from the city attorney, and then let's just be determined that we're gonna bring this back up and we're gonna ride it until we get a resolution that will not only take care of this, but the others.
And not to consider this personal or anything, but if the individual wants to continue to store their aircraft on the property, I would personally not write a closed facility agreement with them. Open T would be the only thing that would be allowable, because they are in such arrears. I would not renew an agreement for that
buy those
facility.
airplanes.
not that I've seen.
Well, again, that was just I want to inject that in there, and I'm certainly appreciative of everything, the comments we've had. I think everybody on the same page. But I really think that, to be fair to everybody, that we ride this out just like this notice from the city attorney's office, but really ride herd on it.
We know what the city attorney's letter specified.
Just,
Does it point out the fact that if they don't come in, that they will be evicted? I mean, that should be in the letter.
they're trying to avoid a civil suit on it. And they're stipulating it, they'll use whatever available tactics they can. But I will also visit them and see just what we can do. And then take the hardest road, if that's basically what we, there's,
Well, we're behind, but we're also losing rent if there are people that wanting hangars.
Absolutely.
So that's why I say rather
but we
than,
still need to recover this back rents. We don't need to just
Sure.
let him move out. And so that's what they're doing with this letter to him. They're not saying, if you move out, we'll forget it. You move out, you're still gonna pay this, we're still gonna
right.
file suit. So.
James has a copy of the letter, and I think it would be, prudent before we all leave today that each of you read this, because it clearly states that all monies are due and the city will take action. So why don't y'all kind of pass that around
Reading it right here, too.
and take a look at it.
Yeah, everybody get a chance to look at that before we leave today. Okay,
It says in the letter that we will initiate eviction action.
everybody get a copy? I didn't think so.
Yeah. So I mean, it states in the letter that if he doesn't do something, we will, so I would say if he's not caught up by the end of January, we begin eviction.
But do you know, we've been guilty of sending these out before and
No.
not really being right and heard on it, and that's what I was trying to.
Well, I think we should follow the attorney's thing here. If he's not paid up by the end of the month,
I
then
concur.
the eviction. So I move that if, in compliance with the city attorney's letter, if he's not caught up, we begin the eviction process.
And I would say 100% in compliance with the attorney's letter.
Yes.
No variation.
Or use whatever means necessary to.
Sir.
And it should be.
You're making that in the form of motion?
I'm making that in the form of a motion, and it, not just in this case, but in all future cases. Once the attorney has sent out a letter, if they're not caught up in compliance with the letter, the process will begin.
Make it clear on this
We're
one.
just basically reinforcing that we're in total agreement with the city attorney. And
I'd make it clear on this one, if you want to evict him out of all hangars, even if he comes and pays one hangar up to,
100%. The letter says all,
It says all.
Right.
Yeah.
and it says no later than
Right.
January 31st.
You're a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Say
Aye.
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 All opposed? I just gotta remember, the 31st, to go visit with the city attorney, and, Wyman, you have any report for us? I'm sure you do.
a 10-year record high on operations.
Say again?
Set a record for the last 10 years and number of operations for the calendar year.
What's that attributed to?
33,077. You look in 2009, we had 33,007. That's the closest to it. So we've set a record high for operations.
By 70 operations. That, it really went from 2016. What's that attributed to, Suzanne? I mean, we got
Springdale's the place,
we got
that-
7,000 more operations.
Springdale's the place that it's happening at.
That's part of it, sure, that's part of it. Are we doing any more flight training out there than we were in 2016? Is that part of it? I know we get credit for all the helicopter operations too, and I think we've seen an uptick in helicopter activity around here, so, but that's quite a jump.
It's also an indication of the economy. You know, people have a little more cash, you know. This
Sure.
last year in our economy is,
And we should see another uptick in 2018, the way it's going. And it should sustain that, because we have all these, everywhere you look, they're building businesses, and the Children's Hospital out here is gonna keep that traffic up there a lot, you know. So, well, that's good news. Sorry, Wyman, I interrupted you.
That's all right. With the restaurant opening in 18.
Pardon me?
With the restaurant opening in 18, that should even help the activity even more.
Are we gonna get the restaurant open this month?
We're hoping so.
They still doing the sprinkler or
Doing electrical up there today, get the fire suppression hooked up.
As you remember, we were gonna have this meeting there, but we postponed, everybody got the message, I'm sure you know they did.
We finished the year with a financial increase slight, but we've got a little bit of outstanding money on the grant, but not much. So anytime we're positive, that's good.
Yep. How much did the city budget for the airport this year in their budget?
Well, they've never really budgeted anything for the airport. It's just been special requests. When we had a request, we'd ask for money for a specific project, and they'd say yes or no. But just a blanket budget for the airport out of their funds, they haven't ever done that.
I said that for a reason, because I think most cities in northwest Arkansas get budget requests to the city in the general budget. And we try to go as long as we can without asking for anything. I've never seen the city refuse to step up to the plate, because we're not out there trying to abuse it by any stretch. So I want to thank everybody here and even the city in that respect for that type of relationship.
Your appraiser has all the appraisals and is working on the review.
On the land acquisition. Getting questions every day about that, and that's the answer, standard answer. We can't do anything until we get the review appraisal, and that's in the works. Do we know when that may be available to us?
I would expect him to have them done within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
So we're right on top of that. Good. Any question for Wyman?
You know, Andrew asked this last month, and we've talked about it in the past. Instead of gallons purchased, gallons sold. Is that a hard thing to get?
Gallons purchased and sold. That's what we're reporting now, I think, it's gallons.
purchased.
Oh, you mean, yeah, we're showing gallons purchased. Oh, gallons sold.
Yeah.
I assume they've probably got that information. We could show that also.
They're talking about operations, our fuel sales, or gallons received here is the record for us too.
But it would be good to know what we're selling on a monthly basis.
Compare the two.
Yes, sir. And if we can actually start tracking that in 2017, moving forward, I think it would be great.
Bill's gonna work on it.
2018, I'm sorry, we're in 2018, not 2017.
I think that's going to have to be a discussion with Dave and Mark regarding that, because that's really more along the lines of what their business operations are about. The city right now is being paid on any of the fuel that we're actually purchasing. So I would have to defer that over to them to make that decision.
We thought it was an easier calculation when we set that in motion. That's why it runs so erratic. When they buy a load, they count that and pay us. And
You probably want to,
and other than just for information purposes, that you wouldn't get, to track the sales. I don't know if it would run much different. It'll run a month ahead.
Annually, it won't make a
It'll
difference.
run a month ahead, won't it?
depends on how they're booking.
Potentially.
Or it'll run a month behind.
It would depend on how they're booking the fuel that they consume.
Pardon me?
Depend on how they book the fuel that they consume themselves.
Right. So, yeah, that's right. That was one of the reasons we did that, was because we had the freight operations that weren't run through that, but it was put in the tank, but they weren't tracking the sales as being public sales, I guess. You want to make the case that we need it?
I just think it'd be nice to be able to, for checks and balances purposes, to be able to see it. See how much is running through and see what's not running through.
I'm trying to get my arms wrapped around which way. We're actually running behind, a month behind with this number, aren't we? Or we're running ahead. The other would run behind, that's right.
Always have an inventory.
Yeah. Then if they sell that out, and there's times they probably, depending on what date the loads are delivered, is how it gets put on this chart. That's why you have,
This number can be deceiving to me, to us sitting here, because
On an annualized basis, it will be consistent,
Balance
more so
out.
than month to month. Whereas potentially, an operator or somebody, if they knew that fuel was going to go up, fill up all their airplanes this month. I mean, there's a lot of ways that, when you know there's a price increase coming, fill your tank.
right?
So I'm not sure that would be a consistent measure either, Greg, I guess is what I'm saying. But if you look at a long-term annualized situation, it's probably a more consistent measure, I would think, than month to month even.
I guess you could compare past 12 months of purchases to a month back, those 12 months.
And you can look at that kind of on the annualized charts here
yeah,
that we
we got
get.
the totals
You
down
can see
here.
the annual amounts, and then you can look month to month,
Yeah.
because that's all on this chart. And granted, it's not going to be 100% consistent, but you could compare, say, June of 17 and June of 15, or whatever, month to month. Now, I realize these are purchases, but that's where our income comes from, not on how much they sell, but on how much is delivered. The
Now,
flow fee then would go, the flowage fee is based on delivered fuel, right?
We're
So-
ahead this year, just like we're on operations.
That's what I'm saying, and, and our concern is tracking income, which would be based on delivered fuel, not whether it's been dispensed or not.
Well, and it's just attempting to track similarities on my part of fuel sales or fuel usage versus total operations. Because I look at 2017, lowest month of operations was January, it was 1685. And then I look at January on fuel, and there are actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's 7 months that are below January in fuel purchases. So being able to read and compare the two stories don't tell, the two items don't tell the same story as far as I'm concerned. January, according to fuel, is a moderate month, where January, according to operations, was the lowest we had.
Yeah, I understand.
So which one is better for comparison and or tracking and
The
or?
operations is what we're concerned with from that standpoint,
Right.
and the fuel, though, is just to track on how much money we are getting in our flow fees.
We're averaging
Apples and oranges.
45,295 a month. That's the average. And again, it runs ahead of everything since 2008, so we had a big year this year.
Anyway,
Anything else? Okay, you might check and see how hard that would be to generate. Okay, thanks. Adam, you got an update for us from Garver?
Yeah, I'll do a quick update here. starting with the runway rehab project, which is your FAA grant that we're working on right now. Last month, we came to you with a draft safety plan. We walked through that. Big picture, once we get to the construction period, we're looking at about 60 days of work outside what we call the AOA, the air operation area, meaning that nothing that we do in that time frame is going to affect airport operations. Working on the vault building, the home run, getting prepared, the staging area, things like that. In advance of our main closure, we'd also have 1 weekend closure where we would close the runway down to do our test strip on the runway. We'd also do all of our severe crack repair at that time, so our mill and fills over our really bad cracks in preparation for the overlay on the runway. And then once we finish our 60-day work outside the AOA, we'd have our main closure. Still tentative on the time frame of that, 15 to 18 days. We're trying to tailor that down a little bit better. We've left it open-ended with the FAA right now as far as the safety plan goes, but we'll tail that down. We get closer to the bidding period. And then once we finish our main closure, we'll open up for 30 days and then have 1 more weekend closure to do our final pavement markings. Once the runway's cured out, we can put the final markings on with glass beads and be off there. The only thing that would change that schedule is if we decided to groove the runway, or if the FAA requires us to groove the runway. That would be done on a nightly basis, meaning we do night closures for 5 or 6 days, and they come in after tower hours and close the runway down and groove throughout the night, open the next day, and then continue for probably 5 or 6 nights. So what's happened since our last meeting? Since then, we've submitted that safety plan to the FAA. We did that the first week of January. It's in their hands. It's usually about a 30-day process. They'll look at it, decide if they feel like it's what's needed to happen to keep the airport safe while we're out there working. And we'll get their feedback probably early February. We've also developed and then submitted your DBE goal, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise goal for the project. And that's also in the FAA's hands for their review. So we'll get some feedback on that probably in February as well. Looking forward, our schedule is to have plans to the FAA by February 28th. And then they'll review those plans and provide us any feedback they have and comments. We'll revise the plans accordingly and plan to advertise for bids in the May timeframe. Bid opening in June, and then right after the bid opening, we'll come to y'all with a grant application for approval to submit a grant to the FAA for 90% of the project costs. I would expect that grant to be executed in the August-September timeframe with the city. Again, we would have a delay, though, for construction. We'd wait till spring or summer of 2019 for that, just to try to get better weather as opposed to trying to do it during the fall/winter timeframe. So that's still on schedule. We had a couple questions last month we posed to the group. The first one was grooving. It seemed like the feedback was, doesn't seem like we need it. Haven't heard any feedback from anybody on it, so we'll probably go to the FAA saying, don't prefer it. They may require us to do it. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. That'll be part of the plan review on February 28th that they do. And the other one was feedback on if there's a best time frame to do the closure. Is it better to do it in the spring and maybe build in a few extra weather days because there's less traffic, or is it better to do it in the summer where we can close it down for a shorter time frame because we don't have to build in so many weather days into the construction contract? Obviously, pluses and minuses to both, but that was what we left you with last week, and if you have feedback on that, I'd be happy to hear it. Again, we're still another month out from having to submit to the FAA, so we can talk about it again next month if you want to think about it some more, or any feedback the FBO may have. We'd always appreciate that too.
When do you need to know that by?
We probably need to have a final decision on that. I'd like to have it by next meeting,
Okay.
which will get our final answer to the FAA. If for some reason we want some more time to collect data, I at least have to know it by the time we advertise for bids in May, 'cause I have to build that into my bid advertisement that, hey, Mr. Contractors, you have to know that construction is going to start around this time frame, because they need to know how to price things effectively.
And that's not as easy, is it? You're better off just to follow whatever procedures you can and schedule it when you can. You can move it around a little bit, but I wouldn't advise moving it 6 months or
Yeah, no,
anything like that.
no.
It actually looks like, based
You
on the
never know.
operations that we've got here,
Your best call may get
March,
you
April
wrong.
is is a lower count, then you go forward. I mean, as far as affecting, of course, you're going to have weather, you know, but if you look at the operations, the months that, if you're looking spring or summer, spring is a better time than summer as far as affecting operations.
As a rule, but it don't always work out that way. That's the point I was making. You can make the best call in it,
Yeah.
but then you can have this thing jump up and bite you, so.
Yeah.
I don't see it makes a whole lot of difference. You can fine tune it right now and say, well, here's when we can do it. Well, maybe if we delay it a month or
Yeah.
whatever, we'd be better off. But I certainly wouldn't worry about wouldn't go in after 6 months because you're moving right back in the same situation.
Yeah. Yeah, the way we'll write the bid package, it'll say, construction will be planned for as early as X date, spring 2019, could be as late as October 2019, giving them a pretty wide range because we may plan for spring break of 2018 or 2019, sorry, and a hurricane comes through. I don't know. So we'd obviously punt to a next appropriate time, you know. But we'll have a range there, and obviously the operation counts are big. We have the weather data. We know how many extra weather days we got to build in for each, and so it's just up to what's the right time for this airport to get it done.
What is the difference in days based off of the weather data, spring or summer?
So,
Ballparking.
yeah, we're looking at 14 working days. You're probably building in 2 weather days in the summer time frame. So you're up to 16 days now for 14 working days with 2 bonus days for weather built in. If you're looking in the March time frame, that number probably goes to 4 weather days built in. So a 14-day closure becomes an 18-day closure.
Your bids are not going to be any different price-wise, a certain time
I wouldn't
of the
expect
year
that.
over-
No. If anything, you know, you may get a little bit better bids, but like Neil said, we're going to give them a pretty wide range. So the difference between spring and summer from a bidding standpoint, probably not a huge effect on it.
So once we put the bid documents out there and we get people to go ahead and offer us up bids on it, at what point in time do we need to go ahead and secure whether we're going to do the summer or spring to avoid them from overbooking?
Yeah, I'd want to get that probably locked in, at least our first shot. I wouldn't want to happen probably in the fall of this year, 2018. We want to go ahead and secure a spot because, like you said, this is going to be a heavy manpower operation in a short time frame. We want to make sure we have equipment and manpower locked up in advance. We've seen that to be the most successful. I can tell you last year we did one, and we had it locked down in January, the date for the June closure, so about 6 months in advance.
Read anything about FAA changing their long-range planning procedures?
You may know something I don't know, Wyman.
Looked like they were planning to go out longer period of time than 5 years.
Oh, so yeah, we are doing some. Did you get the email about the NIPIAS updated 10-year plan? Is that what you're looking at, Wyman? Yeah, that happens every few years where they start looking at, and it has to go deal with the report that they send to Congress every few years of they want to know what 10-year needs are for airports. So in our CIP we do annually, it's a 5-year report. Well, we'll have to draft a more, I don't know the correct term to use, but look a little bit further ahead and try to do the best we can to predict what's going to happen in years 6 through 10, put something on paper and submit it in. Any other questions on that project?
Nope.
The other one we have going on is the PAPI project. When I came to you last month, I came to you with the idea the contractor had for that project, which was to, in order to shorten the number of nights he has to be on site, he was going to prefab all the base cans for all the work and the foundations for the PAPIs. He's working on that right now, and we have set a tentative date for February the 5th to start that work. So obviously that's weather pending. It's about 3 weeks out. So we'll continue looking at that date, and as we get closer to it, start issuing NOTAMs and getting people prepared for it. Again, that'll all be done at night, through night closures, 9 to 6 a.m. So I guess that means when we come back in a month, they should be installed and working.
Sounds good. Any questions for Adam?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Any old business?
Is there any chance our friends at the pallet plant are going to do anything about the south side of their building as far as our entryway and our customers driving along that south side of that building?
Been down that road, hadn't you, James?
Is that, I thought that the city was possibly pursuing some action against them. We've talked about delays and things we've talked about before. Is this something similar?
Where'd we leave off with that, James?
Code enforcement has been over there and the fire department has been over there, and they won't return my phone call, so.
I would think the only option for us then would be to put some kind of netting, fencing, trees, shrubbery, something up there to block it.
Put some fast-growing poplar trees there. Royal poplar.
So you have an ice storm and then they're
I
gone.
think they built right on the property line. We could plant some ivy right next to it.
Yep. Comments from the commissioners?
I've got a comment. I understand that Children's historically been bringing a fixed-wing airplane into this area every Wednesday with doctors on board, and they are continuing to do that, and plus they've added Thursday to their schedule. So just as information, and to Neil's comment a few minutes ago, Children's is bringing doctors into Springdale in fixed-wing airplanes. And I personally talked with a couple of them this morning at the hospital, and they were very, very complimentary of the FBO and what they're seeing and what's taking place on their arrival. So thanks for that. And I've also got a question. Is there a chance that Springdale will get traffic account as Angel One comes into Children's? I think in other towns, as they land in Bentonville and in Rogers and in Fayetteville, you see that on Flight Aware. Kind of curious as to whether or not we would get any additional traffic count.
It depends on if the tower is working that flight, we do.
Anytime they talk to the tower, they can.
Because all the hospital helicopter operations is through the tower, and I'm sure the same thing on the Angel flights.
Of course, at 2 o'clock in the morning, then,
Well,
right.
yeah, that's right. I think it's only the tower operations, if I'm not wrong, right, if I'm not mistaken. Anybody else? If not, then we'll adjourn.